Toy Story 4, what might be one of the most unnecessary sequels of all time. Though, not necessarily an unwelcome one. So I love the Toy Story movies. They're some of my favorite of all time, and I still have my VHS copies of the first two films. And I also have the Blu-ray box set of the original trilogy, which has now been rendered useless thanks to this movie. This is the worst tragedy to ever befall anybody ever. What made the movies so great was how consistent they were. Many people consider the original Toy Story trilogy one of the best trilogies of all time, even more so than like the original Star Wars trilogy or Lord of the Rings. And they managed to tell very compelling and charming stories about toys. And what's really cool about them is if you watch them back to back, you get a really cool idea of how well CGI technology has progressed since the first movie. Because, well, let's be honest, as great as the first movie is, visually, it's not one of the best. I mean, there's a reason why Pixar didn't focus on human characters in some of their first films. They were kind of ahead of the curve. They knew it didn't look that great. And it didn't really seem like they needed a fourth movie because the way the third movie ended was just perfect. It was about Andy passing down his toys to someone of the next generation, and then it had a very heartfelt goodbye, and that was about it. And you really didn't need much more than that. Plus, it didn't really seem like there was much left to explore with Toy Story. I mean, there were a few loose ends left, but there were very few, and this movie does go into them, but it didn't seem like they needed to just make an entire new movie just for a few things that they forgot to explain. Well, anyway, here's what this movie's about. So Bonnie has been playing with all the other toys and not Woody. She's been kind of neglecting him and leaving him in the closet. And he's been not too happy about that because he was always Andy's favorite toy and he wanted, to help her out. Not really for too many selfish reasons, but, it's what he does. At the same time, she's about to start kindergarten and is not too happy about that because, first day of school is kind of scary and sad because you leave your parents. So Woody tags along, and while she's sitting alone in the corner during arts and crafts time, he helps her out and throws her some, things to play around with. And that's how she makes Forky. Yeah, Forky kind of became the face of the film because, well, when they dropped the teaser trailer, people were kind of freaking out over it and asking all kinds of questions, and I think he did gain quite a bit of popularity. I was worried that he'd be kind of an annoying character, but he really wasn't. He was actually kind of charming, and there are long parts of this movie where he wasn't around, so I think they used him well. What does kind of annoy me is that apparently there's an action figure of Forky, and it's like $15. Kind of misses the point of the character, don't you think? But Forky is having a lot of trouble adjusting, and during a road trip he ends up getting lost, and Woody goes off to find him and try to bring him back to Bonnie. And along the way, he runs into Bo Peep, who had mysteriously vanished in the third movie without any type of explanation. And, that's one of the plot points that I guess they never followed up on. And it turns out she's living on her own at a park and helping other toys get played with by kids that come to the park. They also run into some new characters. There's Gabby Gabby, who's a doll, and her army of creepy ventriloquist dummies who live in an antique store, who are kind of the villains of this movie, without spoiling too much, but I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And if you remember from the teaser trailer, you probably saw Ducky and Bunny, who are stuffed animals at a carnival. They're voiced by Key and Peele, who are hilarious as always, so they're basically the comic relief of the movie. There's also Duke Kaboom, who's a toy that's kind of a parody of real-life stuntman Evel Knievel, and I didn't know this at the time when I was watching the movie, but he's voiced by Keanu Reeves. I didn't know that until I saw the end credits, and I guess we need to have Keanu Reeves in everything nowadays. Not that I'm complaining. Although I gotta admit, I should have known that was Keanu Reeves because there was a moment in the movie where he actually went, whoa. And while I am talking about voice actors, I think I should mention that the voice of Mr. Potato Head, Don Rickles, did pass away some time ago, and they actually did tribute the movie to him at the end of the credits. There was also Giggles, who's this tiny little figure that lives inside of this compact, which is clearly supposed to be a reference to Polly Pocket. And I gotta say, I do love a lot of the references they made in this movie, especially not just as a fan of Toy Story, but as a toy collector myself. Like, I know a lot of the antique toys that you see in the movie are based off of famous antique toys in real life. There were also these three army guys that were very similar looking to G.I. Joe figures, and I really like that. And one thing I really thought was funny was they actually name dropped He-Man, which kind of made me laugh, especially considering the context in which they mentioned him. And it got me thinking, Disney and Pixar, this is like your biggest franchise. This is, it's got lots of merchandise. It clearly makes a lot of money. I think you can afford a couple of licenses, I know we have like Barbie and Mr. Potato Head, and in the third movie we saw My Neighbor Totoro as a plush very briefly, but I'm pretty sure they can afford us, a couple of seconds of an actual He-Man figure, or, maybe give us like Optimus Prime, just very briefly, just, a little something for the audience. Also, I'm pretty sure if they do have Optimus Prime in a Toy Story movie, he'll be done a lot better than he has been in a lot of the live-action movies that have come out. So there were a lot of things about this movie I really did like. I liked seeing Woody reconnect with Bo Peep after losing her all these years. Although, I do still find it kind of weird that the toys have, like, relationships. Like, I don't know, I just always found that kind of strange. I did like that they explained what happened to her, because they kind of lampshaded it in the third movie, and nobody ever brought it up again, so it was nice that they gave, a little bit of backstory as to what happened. Although, I feel like what happened to her was, very quick and very cruel. Like, I kind of wonder if they even had a plan for this from the beginning. Like, if they were ever going to explain it, or if they just kind of wrote her off because maybe there was too many characters in the movie or something like that. I did like a lot of the funny moments in this movie. Like I said before, Key and Peele were hilarious. If you saw the teaser trailer, they're kind of playing the characters they played in the Key and Peele TV show, when they're like two guys in front of a building talking about movies and just screaming and hollering and going on and just going back and forth and all that. And there was some really funny moments in this. So there's a scene in the movie where they have to get a key from the antique store owner, and they showed in the trailer that they were going to just kind of jump at her and grab her face and just assault her. And it turns out, no, they were just explaining it to them. It didn't really happen. But it goes a lot further in this movie. And the way and where it goes is just really funny. There was another part in this movie where they had to keep delaying Bonnie's parents, so it gives Woody and the others enough time to get back to the RV. And there's this running gag where one of Bonnie's toys, which is a plush unicorn, kept trying to come up with ideas on how they can get their dad arrested. Just to try and delay them, and they didn't do it too much, but I thought that was really funny too. Like I said before, I thought Forky was going to be very annoying, but no, he was a very endearing and cute character, and I kind of liked his transition into accepting the fact that he's a toy. Like, there wasn't really like a moment where it happened, but rather they spent a lot of time with him. Like, Woody talked to him when they were trying to get back to the RV from the road when he jumped out the window, and he started to understand that. He even spent some time with some other characters, and eventually he just kind of grew to accept it, and I thought that was really cool. But by far my favorite thing about this movie is Gabby, because like I said before, she comes off as kind of the villain of the movie because she's in charge of the antique store. She's kind of like the boss of it, and she has an army of creepy ventriloquist dummies that do her bidding and, watch over the antique store while she's, in her case and everything. But when they start to go into why she's doing the things that she does and what her motives are, you start to understand her a lot better, and it does kind of transition to the point where she might not really be the villain. I'm trying not to spoil too much, but let me just say the final resolution with her, like, after what she wanted to do happens, I will say she might be the most relatable character in the entire Toy Story series. Yeah. I do, however, have a few problems with this movie, and this one is going to be kind of nitpicky, but I thought there were way too many characters in this. And, you know, they've had big casts of characters before in the Toy Story movies, but we typically focus on, you know, the main characters, and, you know, everyone else is kind of a side character. At this one, it just felt like they kept adding characters to, you know, the main characters that we're following around. And it's not that they were bad characters or anything, it just felt a bit crowded. Like, there are so many characters that probably could have been cut out. Like, I hate to say it, but as great and funny as they were, Key and Peele's characters didn't really feel like they needed to be in this movie. Like, they could have easily been written out. I mean, again, I'm not upset that they were in the movie. They were funny. They were definitely keeping some of the comic relief, but other than that, they really didn't contribute too much else. But I think my biggest problem with this movie was I didn't like the way Woody was treated throughout the whole thing. Like, right from the very beginning, he was neglected by Bonnie and left in the closet. And, you know, you go back to the third movie, at the very end, when Andy was giving her his toys, he made it perfectly clear that Woody was his most prized possession, and it, you know, they played it up like he was gonna be the main character of the whole thing, but no, he just got neglected, and he had to take initiative so that he wouldn't just stay in the closet. I mean, heck, he's the whole reason Forky was created. I also didn't like the way the others treated him as well, because he was berated a lot in this movie, and when he met Bo Peep and saw that she was helping other toys and everything, and it felt very undermining of all the good that he did. Like, did nothing else he did matter? Like, suddenly everything he did was just not good enough? It just felt very mean-spirited. Though the one thing I was most worried about with this movie was basically Forky, because he's something that we've not seen in this movie before. He is an inanimate object that was put together to look like a toy, and he came to life. And I was very worried that they were going to answer the question as to why the toys are alive, because they seem to allude to that in the trailers, and without spoiling too much, they don't answer it, because they really shouldn't. And I'm glad they didn't, because, you know, they never really gone into that. There's not really any established lore for, like, the Toy Story series. And because of that, you know, a lot of people have had fun with it. There have been theories about the Toy Story series and just Pixar in general, and it's been a lot of fun. And I really didn't think they needed to answer that question. I don't think they ever need to answer that question, because, well, they don't have to. It's not the point. And, you know, there's the old saying, sometimes the question is more fascinating than the answer. But overall, this was a really good movie. I thought the good parts definitely outweighed the bad parts. It's certainly worth your time if you've been a fan of the series. But I do feel like that it's not quite up to par with the others. Like, the original trilogy was very consistent. This one was just a little bit of a step down. Not much, not a whole lot, nothing that ruins it, but it just, again, it's a movie that didn't really need to exist, but I'm not upset that it exists, so I guess that's something. But I do hope this is definitely the last Toy Story movie, because, well, the way this movie ends, if they do try to do another movie, it just wouldn't be the same. But that's all I got for Toy Story 4. Leave a comment below and let me know what you thought of it. My name is Rob, and have a wonderful day.